Princess Ava stood on the balcony of the royal palace, looking out at the glowing city below. The lights sparkled in the distance like stars, and the gentle hum of the city echoed through the air. Lyrian, the planet she called home, was peaceful and beautiful. But Ava knew better than anyone that this peace was fragile. Beneath the surface, dark things were happening, and Ava was caught in the middle of it all. She was the only human in the royal family. Her father, King Gareth, ruled the planet, but most of the royal court was made up of aliens from various species. Ava had always felt like an outsider, not fully accepted by either her people or the aliens who governed her world. She was different, and that difference had always made her feel alone. Her father, though kind and wise, had never treated her as an equal. He loved her, but he had always favored her older brother, Marcus. Marcus was the heir to the throne, the one who would one day take over the kingdom. Ava had always respected her brother, but deep down, she knew he did not have the same love for her. He saw her as weak, an obstacle to his own rise to power. The celebration that night was meant to honor Lyrian's alliance with the alien races in the galaxy, but for Ava, it felt like a trap. It was a grand affair, with music, dancing, and the finest food from across the universe. But Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The guests, dressed in brilliant colors and shimmering fabrics, danced and laughed. Ava could hear their voices in the distance, but she felt detached, like an actress in a play. Watching others live their lives while her own felt trapped in a script she couldn't escape. Her thoughts were interrupted when a familiar voice called her name. "Ava, are you hiding from the fun again?" Ava turned to see her older brother, Prince Marcus, standing at the entrance of the balcony. He looked handsome, as always, with his sharp features and confident smile. His golden hair shone under the light, and his eyes sparkled with ambition. But Ava could see something different in his gaze tonight. There was a coldness in his eyes that made her uneasy. "I'm just enjoying the view," Ava said with a small smile. "It's peaceful out here." Marcus stepped closer, his smile never faltering. "I was just wondering where you'd gone off to. Father has been asking about you. He wants you to meet with some of the Galactic leaders." Ava didn't want to go. She had always hated these formal gatherings. The alien leaders didn't care about her. They only cared about what she could offer them. She was a human princess, a symbol, but not much more than that. But she couldn't refuse her father, not on a night like this. "Tell Father I'll be there soon," she said, turning back toward the city. Marcus didn't leave right away. Instead, he stayed behind her, silent for a long moment. Ava could feel his presence, heavy and oppressive, like a shadow. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, almost too calm. "You know, Ava," he said softly, "you're in the way. You always have been." Ava froze. His words cut through her like a knife. She turned to look at him, but he was already gone, walking back into the palace as if nothing had happened. Ava stood there, her heart pounding in her chest. What had he meant by that? Why did he say those words, so quietly but with so much meaning? She didn't have time to dwell on it. The night was slipping away, and she had a duty to fulfill. Ava took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unease that clung to her. She walked back into the palace, her steps echoing on the marble floors. Inside, the grand hall was alive with activity. Aliens from every corner of the galaxy mingled, their conversations filled with strange languages Ava could barely understand. She spotted her father across the room, speaking with a tall, blue-skinned alien with glowing eyes. King Gareth noticed her approach and smiled warmly. "Ava, my dear," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Come, meet the delegates from Corellon. They've brought gifts from their world." Ava forced a smile as she joined her father and the alien leader. The conversation was filled with small talk about trade and alliances. The Corellon delegate handed Ava a small box wrapped in silver ribbon. She opened it, revealing a delicate crystal that seemed to pulse with light. "It's a symbol of our friendship," the delegate explained. "A gift from our people." Ava nodded politely, accepting the gift, but she could feel her mind drifting. She couldn't help but think of Marcus's words. What did he mean? Was he planning something? She had always trusted him, but now doubt was creeping into her thoughts. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Ava spoke with more delegates, shaking hands, smiling, and playing the part of the perfect princess. But all the while, she couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. As the evening wore on, Ava excused herself from the gathering. She needed to clear her head. She walked down a long hallway, away from the noise and chaos of the ball. The palace was quiet here, the only sound the soft echo of her footsteps. She turned a corner and was startled to find herself face to face with Marcus again. This time, he wasn't smiling. His expression was cold and hard. "I told you, Ava," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You are a problem. You're standing in my way." Ava stepped back, her heart racing. "What are you talking about, Marcus? We're family." "No, Ava," Marcus sneered. "We're not family. You're just a pawn in this game, just like the rest of them. I've been patient, but I won't wait much longer." Before Ava could respond, a sudden crash echoed down the hallway. She turned, startled, but before she could make sense of what was happening, she felt a sharp pain in her side. Something cold and metallic pressed against her skin. She gasped, feeling her legs go weak. Her vision blurred as she collapsed to the floor. The last thing she saw before everything went black was Marcus's face, his expression twisted with anger and something else, something darker. When Princess Ava woke up, everything was blurry. She felt dizzy and confused, her head spinning. Slowly, her vision came back into focus, and she realized she was lying on a cold, hard floor. The sharp pain in her side was still there, and she touched it with trembling fingers. There was blood, warm and sticky, oozing from a wound. She was in a small, dimly lit room, and the silence around her felt heavy. She tried to move, but her body refused to obey. She felt weak, as though all her strength had been drained. Ava closed her eyes, trying to think clearly. What had happened? Where was she? What was going on? The last thing she remembered was Marcus. Her brother had betrayed her. His cold words echoed in her mind, reminding her that he saw her as nothing more than a problem. He had been the one who had ordered the attack. It was him. The pain in her side was proof of that. He had tried to kill her. Ava's heart raced as she forced herself to sit up. The room was small, with stone walls and no windows. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth. She didn't recognize the place. She had to get out. She had to survive. She clenched her teeth, ignoring the pain in her body. She couldn't afford to stay here. If Marcus wanted her dead, he wouldn't stop until she was. She had to find a way out. But how? She was alone, with no one to help her. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway outside the room. Ava's heart skipped a beat. Someone was coming. She didn't know if it was Marcus or one of his men, but she couldn't take any chances. She had to hide. Without thinking, Ava crawled to the corner of the room and pressed herself against the wall. She held her breath, hoping that whoever it was wouldn't find her. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped right outside the door. Ava's body tensed, and she waited for what felt like an eternity. The door creaked open slowly. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted by the dim light from the hallway. Ava's eyes narrowed as she tried to make out who it was. The figure was tall, and the movement was too fluid to be one of Marcus's soldiers. Ava's heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. Could it be someone who could help her? The figure stepped fully into the room, and Ava's breath caught in her throat. It was Jackson, her father's personal bodyguard. He was the last person she expected to see. He had always been loyal to her family, but she had never imagined he would come to her rescue. Jackson looked at her with concern in his eyes, but there was no time for pleasantries. He moved quickly toward her, kneeling down beside her. "Princess Ava," he said in a low, calm voice, "you're hurt. We need to get you out of here." Ava stared at him, struggling to find her voice. "Jackson, how did you find me?" "I have my ways," he said, his tone serious. "But we don't have much time. Marcus is already planning his next move. We need to get you somewhere safe." Ava nodded, trying to stand, but her body refused to cooperate, and she nearly collapsed. Jackson caught her just in time, his strong arms supporting her as she tried to get her bearings. "Don't worry, I've got you," Jackson said softly, his voice steady. "I won't let anything happen to you." Ava's mind was spinning. She had trusted Marcus her whole life. How could he have done this? Why had he betrayed her? "Why would Marcus do this?" Ava whispered, her voice shaky. Jackson's jaw tightened. "Power. Your brother always wanted the throne. He never cared about you, Ava. You were just in his way. He knew that if he could get rid of you, he would have a clear path to rule." Ava closed her eyes. Feeling the weight of his words, her own brother had plotted to kill her. It was hard to believe, but everything pointed to it. The way he had acted earlier, the coldness in his eyes. It had all been a lie. Jackson helped her to her feet, and they moved quickly through the dark, narrow hallways of the palace. Ava's mind raced as she tried to make sense of everything. She couldn't stay here. She had to escape. But where could she go? Marcus controlled the entire planet. There was no place she could hide where he couldn't find her. As they reached a side exit, Jackson paused and turned to her. "We have to get off Lyrian," he said urgently. "Your father is too busy with the Galactic leaders. He won't be able to protect you. The only way to stay safe is to leave the planet." Ava nodded. She knew he was right. She had no choice. But leaving her home, leaving everything she knew, was terrifying. She had never imagined her life would come to this. Jackson helped her out the door and into the night. The cool air was a shock to her system, and she shivered, her wound throbbing painfully. She stumbled slightly, but Jackson steadied her. He looked around, scanning the area before leading her to a small, hidden transport ship. As they approached the ship, Ava's heart sank. It was an old model, nothing like the sleek, advanced ships that the royal family used. But it didn't matter. This was the only chance they had to escape. Jackson helped Ava inside, and they quickly strapped in. As the ship powered up, Ava felt a surge of fear. What if they were caught? What if Marcus sent his men after them? "We'll be fine," Jackson said, as if reading her mind. "I've got it all planned out. We'll make it." The ship lifted off the ground, slowly at first, then faster as it broke through the atmosphere. Ava looked out the small window, watching Lyrian grow smaller and smaller. She felt a lump form in her throat. Was she really leaving everything behind? Her family, her home, her life? But she knew there was no other choice. She couldn't stay, not with Marcus hunting her down. As the ship shot through the stars, Ava leaned back in her seat, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She wasn't safe yet. There were still so many questions. Who could she trust? How could she stop her brother? And what was going to happen to her home, to Lyrian, without her? Jackson glanced over at her, his expression serious but calm. "Don't worry, Princess. We'll figure this out. We'll find a way to stop Marcus." Ava nodded, but her mind was full of doubts. The future was uncertain, and the galaxy was vast. She had no idea where this journey would take her, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never stop fighting. Not for herself, not for her people, and not for her kingdom. The stars outside the ship's small window looked distant and cold. Ava stared at them, her mind far away. Her heart was still heavy with the shock of her brother's betrayal. Marcus had always been a part of her life, someone she looked up to, trusted. But now, that trust was shattered, and her world felt like it was falling apart. Jackson was at the controls, his hands steady as he guided the ship through the vastness of space. Despite the chaos, there was something about him that gave Ava a sense of calm. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, she always felt like she could believe him. In a world where lies and betrayal seemed to be everywhere, Jackson was one of the few people she still trusted. Ava leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes, trying to focus on anything other than the flood of thoughts rushing through her mind. How could Marcus do this? Why would he want her dead? And what had he meant when he said she was just a pawn? As she drifted into a restless sleep, memories of her childhood began to resurface. She remembered her mother, Queen Alina, who had died when Ava was just a young girl. The queen's death had been ruled an accident, but there were always whispers about the true cause. Ava had been too young to understand at the time, but now, with everything that had happened, she began to wonder if her mother's death had been more than just a tragedy. Had it been part of something bigger? Something that Marcus might have been involved in? Hours later, Ava woke to the sound of Jackson's voice, breaking through the silence. "We're approaching the safe house," he said, looking back at her with a focused expression. "We'll be there soon. Get ready." Ava nodded, trying to shake off the fog of sleep. She had a long way to go before she would feel safe again. But the safe house Jackson had mentioned was supposed to be hidden, far away from the reach of Marcus and his soldiers. It was the only place she could hide for now. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, Ava's thoughts turned back to her mother. She had always been told that Queen Alina had died in a tragic accident. But Ava had never been satisfied with that explanation. Her mother was a strong woman, wise and capable. She had always been the heart of the kingdom. The idea that she could have died so suddenly, without reason, never made sense to Ava. Jackson landed the ship smoothly in a hidden valley, surrounded by dense forests and towering mountains. The area was remote, and no one would be able to find them here, at least not easily. Ava stepped out of the ship, taking in the quiet beauty of the place. It was peaceful, far from the chaos of the palace, but Ava couldn't relax. Not yet. Not until she knew what had really happened to her mother. "We should rest for a while," Jackson suggested. "But I know you have questions. I'll tell you everything I know." Ava turned to him, her eyes searching his face. She had always trusted Jackson. But now she needed more than just protection. She needed answers. "Jackson," she said quietly, "what really happened to my mother? I've always been told it was an accident, but I don't believe it. I can't. Was she part of something? Was there a rebellion?" Jackson's expression darkened. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked away as if trying to find the right words. After a long moment, he finally spoke. "You're right to ask, Princess. It wasn't an accident. Your mother was involved in a secret movement, a resistance against the Galactic Alliance. She wasn't just a queen. She was a leader. She wanted to free Lyrian from the influence of the alien factions, to give humans more power and control over their own future." Ava felt a surge of shock and disbelief. Her mother, a rebel? It didn't fit with the image she had in her mind of the gentle, wise queen who had always been there for her. But as Jackson spoke, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. "Why didn't anyone tell me this?" Ava asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "Why didn't my father tell me? Why didn't he stop it?" Jackson hesitated before answering. "Your father didn't know everything. The rebellion was secret, and your mother wanted to protect you from the truth. She didn't want you involved in something so dangerous, but she knew what she was doing. And when she died, it wasn't just a loss for you, Princess. It was a loss for all of Lyrian." Ava sat down, her mind spinning. Her mother had been fighting for freedom, for the future of her people, and Ava had never known. All her life, she had been taught to respect the alliance with the alien races, to play her part in the political game. But now she was starting to see things differently. Her mother had fought to protect Lyrian, to protect Ava's future. And yet, she had died in secret. No one had ever spoken the truth. "I have to find out more," Ava said, standing up. "I need to know everything about the rebellion. If Marcus is involved in all of this, if he's been working with the aliens all along, then I have to stop him. I have to protect Lyrian, just like my mother did." Jackson looked at her with a mixture of concern and admiration. "You're right, but you're not alone in this. I'll help you, no matter what it takes. We'll find the information we need, and we'll bring your brother to justice." Ava nodded, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle on her shoulders. But she wasn't afraid. She had always dreamed of making a difference, of being more than just a princess. Now she had the chance, and she would fight, just like her mother had. The next few days were spent gathering information. Jackson had a network of contacts, people who had been loyal to the Queen, people who knew the truth about the rebellion. Slowly, piece by piece, Ava began to uncover the details of her mother's secret fight. Her mother had worked with a group of humans and sympathetic aliens, a small but determined group who believed in freedom for all races, not just the powerful alien factions that controlled the galaxy. But as Ava dug deeper into her mother's past, she began to see something even more disturbing. Marcus wasn't just a traitor. He had been working with the alien factions long before he had ever turned on her. He had known about the rebellion. He had even helped cover up her mother's death, all to maintain the power that he now craved. The more Ava learned, the more determined she became. She wasn't going to let her brother take everything. She wouldn't let him destroy Lyrian, and she wouldn't let him erase the legacy of her mother. Ava wasn't just fighting for her throne anymore. She was fighting for the future of her people. As she stood in the small cabin looking out over the vast landscape, Ava knew that this was only the beginning. The road ahead would be dangerous, and she had no idea how it would end. But she was ready, ready to face Marcus, ready to face the galaxy, and ready to take back everything that had been stolen from her. Ava's heart raced as she stood in front of the large map displayed on the wall of the hidden cabin. The map was detailed, showing the entire galaxy and marking out key locations, military bases, alien territories, and secret hideouts. But one place caught her eye, the royal palace of Lyrian. It was marked in bold red, the symbol of danger, of the place where everything had begun and where the final battle to save her kingdom would take place. Jackson stood beside her, his arms crossed as he watched the map. "We've gathered all the information we need," he said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "Now it's time to act. Marcus has control of the palace, but we can't let him keep it. We have to move fast." Ava nodded, her fingers brushing over the map. She had spent the past few days learning everything she could about Marcus's plan, the military support he had gathered, and the alien factions that had sided with him. She wasn't just fighting for her throne anymore. She was fighting for Lyrian's freedom. And she knew that the only way to win was to take back the palace, to expose Marcus for what he truly was, and to reclaim the power that was rightfully hers. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded in her chest. "Let's do this." Jackson's eyes softened as he looked at her. "We're in this together, Ava. We've come this far. I won't let you down." They spent the next few hours preparing for their mission. Jackson contacted a few trusted allies who were scattered across the galaxy, making sure they had backup if things went wrong. They couldn't do this alone. Ava's eyes kept drifting back to the map, her mind already visualizing what would happen once they reached Lyrian. The palace would be heavily guarded, but Ava knew that she had the element of surprise on her side. Marcus would never expect her to come for him. As night fell, they boarded the small transport ship again. Ava felt a mixture of fear and determination. She was about to face the most dangerous battle of her life, but she couldn't back down. She couldn't let Marcus win. Not after everything he had done. Not after betraying their family, after betraying her trust. The journey to Lyrian was long, and the closer they got, the more Ava's thoughts raced. She couldn't stop thinking about her mother, about the rebellion, about the future of her people. Marcus had made it clear that he would stop at nothing to take the throne, and he had already proven how far he was willing to go. He would use any means necessary, bribery, manipulation, assassination, to secure his power. But Ava wasn't like him. She wasn't going to sit by and let him destroy everything her mother had worked for. As the ship entered the atmosphere of Lyrian, Jackson adjusted the controls, guiding them through the thick clouds. Ava could see the palace in the distance, its tall spires reaching up to the sky. It looked so peaceful from here, so perfect. But Ava knew that behind its grand walls there was corruption, greed, and betrayal. The ship touched down in a secluded area near the palace, hidden from the watchful eyes of Marcus's soldiers. Ava felt the familiar sense of urgency as she stepped out of the ship, her boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. Jackson was already preparing their weapons, checking the small blasters and knives they had hidden beneath their clothes. "Are you sure about this?" Jackson asked, looking at her with concern. "Once we go in, there's no turning back." Ava took a deep breath and looked toward the palace. She had always known this moment would come. She had always known she would have to fight for what was hers. "I'm sure," she said, her voice firm. "It's time to end this." They moved quickly through the shadows, staying low and avoiding the patrols that roamed the grounds. The palace was heavily guarded, but Ava knew the layout well. She had spent years in its halls, walking its corridors, attending meetings, and pretending to be the perfect princess. Now, those memories became her guide as she navigated the palace's secret passages and hidden routes. They reached the central courtyard without being seen. But as they approached the entrance to the throne room, they were stopped by a group of guards. Ava's heart skipped a beat, but she didn't hesitate. Jackson moved quickly, taking down the guards with precise, silent moves. In a matter of seconds, the guards were incapacitated, and Ava and Jackson were inside the palace. The throne room doors loomed ahead, massive and intimidating. Ava's breath caught in her throat. This was it. This was where she would confront Marcus. The throne room had once felt like a place of power, a symbol of her family's rule. Now it felt like a prison. As they stepped inside, Ava's eyes immediately locked onto Marcus. He was standing near the throne, flanked by a group of alien officials who had pledged their loyalty to him. His back was turned to her. But he must have sensed her presence because he slowly turned around, a smirk forming on his face. "Well, well," Marcus said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "The little princess finally decides to show up. I was wondering how long it would take you to come crawling back." Ava's heart burned with anger, but she didn't let it show. She stepped forward, her voice steady and full of authority. "You've betrayed everything, Marcus. You've betrayed our family, our kingdom, and our people. You're nothing but a coward who will stop at nothing to take what doesn't belong to you." Marcus's smirk faded, and his eyes darkened. "You don't understand, Ava. I'm doing what's best for Lyrian. I'm making us stronger. The alien factions are the future. We can't keep fighting them. We need to join them, or we'll be destroyed." "That's a lie," Ava shot back. "You've only sold us out for your own power. You've been working with them all along. You've been plotting this from the beginning." Marcus stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "You don't get it, do you? I am the future of Lyrian. I was born to rule. You were just in my way. You always were." Before Ava could respond, Marcus signaled to his guards, who stepped forward, weapons raised. Jackson moved quickly, his blaster drawn, but Ava stopped him with a raised hand. "No, Jackson, this is between me and him," she said firmly. Marcus laughed. the sound cold and cruel. "You think you can stop me, Ava? You think you can take back the throne with a few weapons and some misguided loyalty? You're nothing without me." Ava's eyes burned with determination. "We'll see about that." With a sudden, swift movement, Ava lunged forward, grabbing the hilt of the sword that was placed beside the throne. It had once belonged to her father, a symbol of the royal bloodline. With the sword in her hand, she felt the weight of her ancestors' power surge through her. The battle that followed was fierce. Ava fought with everything she had, her moves swift and precise. Marcus was strong, but Ava was fueled by her love for her people, her need to protect Lyrian from his treachery. The clash of metal rang through the room as they fought, each blow echoing with the promise of victory or defeat. In the end, it wasn't the strength of the weapon that decided the battle. It was the strength of the will. Ava's resolve was unbreakable, and as she stood over Marcus, her sword raised high, she knew that she had won. Her kingdom was hers once more. The air in the throne room was thick with tension. Ava stood over her brother, Marcus, the weight of the sword still heavy in her hands. He lay on the ground, defeated, his face twisted with disbelief. His once proud eyes, full of ambition and hate, now looked empty, as though he had finally realized that his dream of ruling Lyrian had come to an end. Ava's chest rose and fell with each breath, her heart racing from the battle that had just taken place. She had never imagined it would end this way, standing above her own brother, fighting for the throne that should have been hers all along. She had dreamed of this moment, but now that it was here, it felt strange, almost unreal. She looked around the throne room. The alien officials who had sided with Marcus had scattered when the fighting began. They had abandoned him, just as he had abandoned her and their people. The throne, once a symbol of power, now seemed hollow, empty. It was no longer a place of victory. It was a reminder of all the lies, the betrayal, and the bloodshed. Jackson stepped forward, his footsteps soft on the cold stone floor. His face was grim but proud. He had been by her side throughout this whole journey, and now, together, they had taken back Lyrian. "You did it," Jackson said, his voice filled with respect. "It's over." Ava nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on Marcus. "Is it really?" she asked quietly. "Is it really over, Jackson?" Jackson looked at her with understanding. "It will be. The people will rally behind you now. They'll see that you're the rightful ruler. You've proven that." Ava wasn't sure. The battle for the throne had been won, but the war for the future of Lyrian had only just begun. There was so much more to rebuild, so many wounds to heal. She couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus's betrayal was just a symptom of something deeper, something wrong with the galaxy itself. The alien factions that had supported him, the corruption that had seeped into every corner of the royal court, those things wouldn't disappear overnight. But for now, she had to focus on the immediate task at hand. She had to show Lyrian that she was ready to lead, ready to make her mother proud and protect the people her family had sworn to serve. She turned to Jackson. "We need to send a message to the people. I need to speak to them." Jackson gave her a sharp nod. "I'll arrange it. We can broadcast your message across the kingdom. It's time for the people to know they have a new queen." Ava didn't waste any time. She walked over to the throne, the place that had always been just a symbol, something distant and unimportant in her eyes. Now, it was hers. It was her responsibility. She sat down, the weight of the crown heavy on her head. But it wasn't the crown that weighed her down. It was the knowledge that there was so much more work to be done, so many decisions to be made. Jackson left to prepare for the broadcast, and Ava remained in the throne room, alone with her thoughts. She couldn't help but think of her mother. She had always dreamed of following in her footsteps, of making her mother proud. But now that she had the throne, it didn't feel like the victory she had imagined. It felt like a beginning of something difficult and uncertain. Ava closed her eyes and let the silence of the room wash over her. She thought of her people, of the families who had suffered under Marcus's rule, of the resistance that had fought so hard to bring her back to the palace. They deserved a better future, one that didn't rely on power-hungry rulers or alien influence. They deserved a kingdom where everyone was equal, where peace wasn't a dream, but a reality. She didn't know how long she sat there, lost in thought, before Jackson returned. He was followed by a group of officials, all of them waiting for her direction. Ava stood up, her hands resting on the armrests of the throne. She was ready now. "I'm ready," she said to Jackson, her voice steady and strong. "Let's begin." They moved quickly to the communication room, where the broadcast equipment was set up. Ava stood in front of the camera, her heart pounding. She had never done anything like this before. She had never spoken to her people as their queen. But this was her moment. This was her chance to show them that she was ready to lead. "Citizens of Lyrian," Ava began, her voice clear and commanding, "I stand before you today, not just as your princess, but as your queen. The time of betrayal is over. The time of fear is over. My brother, Marcus, sought to control this kingdom through lies, manipulation, and power, but he is no longer in control. I am here to restore peace, to rebuild our kingdom, and to make sure that no one, human or alien, will ever again threaten the freedom of our people." Ava's eyes locked with the camera. She spoke not just to the people of Lyrian, but to the galaxy. Lyrian is a kingdom of strength, of courage, of unity. We will no longer live in the shadow of alien empires or be controlled by those who seek to divide us. We will stand together, stronger than ever, and we will forge our own path. This is our future, and I will fight for it with all my heart. She paused, letting the words sink in. The silence in the room was deafening. The weight of the moment pressed on her chest, but Ava didn't falter. She had come this far, and now she had to show the galaxy and her people that she was ready to lead them into a new era. "I promise you this," she continued, her voice full of conviction. "I will be a queen for all of Lyrian. I will listen to your voices, and together we will build a future of hope and prosperity. We will not be ruled by fear. We will be free." With those final words, Ava turned off the communication device. She felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, but also a sense of relief. The message had been delivered. Now all she could do was wait and see how the people would respond. Over the next few days, word spread quickly across Lyrian. The people who had once feared Marcus's rule now looked to Ava for guidance. The broadcast had been powerful, but it was the actions that would follow that would truly determine her success. Ava worked tirelessly with Jackson and her loyal allies, meeting with leaders, hearing the concerns of the people, and making plans for the future. There was much to rebuild, but the kingdom was filled with hope. The resistance that had once fought to bring her back to the throne now became her closest advisors. Together, they began the difficult work of undoing the damage Marcus had caused. As the days passed, Ava's resolve only grew stronger. She wasn't just the queen of Lyrian, she was the symbol of its future, a future where her people would never again be oppressed by anyone, whether alien or human. Ava stood at the balcony of the palace, looking out at the city below. The lights of Lyrian twinkled in the distance, and the sound of the city's heartbeat reached her ears. It was a new day, a day full of possibilities. For the first time since her mother's death, Ava felt like she was truly home. She wasn't just a princess anymore, she was a queen, and she would do everything in her power to make Lyrian the kingdom it was always meant to be.